Is everyone live?
Yeah, I'm up. Okay. Good afternoon. I'd like to introduce you to the group, our debate group today of 5 members. Our first member is Carrie, and then I'll tell a little bit about Carrie. Our second member is Madeline, and then I'll tell a little bit about Madeline. Our third member is Rachel, and our fourth member is Jotten, and fifth member, my name is Chris. I would like to introduce our topic. Our topic today is the rights of exercise personal liberties versus the need for habilitation. Our format today is going to be more of a point-counterpoint debate. So here's Madeline discussing our first point, respecting personal liberties of individuals. Madeline.
Madeline, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry. I'll get better at that. Okay, so today I'm going to discuss the personal liberties and opportunities that people who have disabilities have, as well as people who do not have disabilities. To start off, I'm going to talk about guardianship and the benefits, as well as mostly the drawbacks to guardianship versus the opportunity to have the supported decision making. I'll get more specific on that, sorry. And so the problems of guardianship is that it takes away the personal rights of an adult that has a disability. These rights include decisions where to live, their medical care, what job, even things that they decide to eat or who they spend their time with, and whether they can get married are just a few of the rights. And with the guardianship, people often complain that people who have disabilities are living in a perpetual childhood and that they are never able to have the ability to make their own decisions in what they do in all aspects of their life. And so another model that can be used for people who have disabilities is the supported decision-making model. And this model gives more empowerment to people who have disabilities, and it gives them the assurance that they are the ultimate decision maker, but they have support from others that give them assistance for the decisions that they need to make for themselves. And so with making model, this can help a person understand the options for different things such as medical care, where they live, who are their primary caretakers. It also can help them understand the responsibilities and consequences in all of these actions. In this model, it also helps them understand information relevant to their decisions in each of these aspects, and it can help communicate the decisions to the appropriate people who are responsible for their medical care, things like that, basically helping them communicate to doctors, but also giving them the ultimate decision in their care. With this model, they cannot make a decision for that person. So whoever is, I don't want to say guardian, but whoever is the person that is listed in their supported decision making, they cannot make the ultimate decision for this person, where with guardianship, it basically could just be all of that guardian's decisions without any feedback from the person who has the disability. With this model, it can give people an improved quality of life. So even though they may not have the complete ability to make every decision for themselves, they are given the information that is needed so that they can be the most informed and also make the ultimate decision. And so I'm hoping, just for you guys, I'm hoping to have a visual that can display how many people are starting to go with this model versus where guardianship is. So I'm still looking for statistics and data, but so that's kind of where I'm going with my point. And then I would want to obviously list data and just supporting, I'll list more supporting research, but so now I'm kind of curious where you're going with the council.
Okay.
So
Thanks, Madeline. Those are some very good points. Thank you very much. But what about the person who thinks habilitation allows for more realistic opportunity for a more meaningful life? Rachel, what do you think about that?
So I was going to start this with a little bit of history about habilitation and how the habilitation kind of movement got formed. So in 1971, there was a federal court case in Alabama that decided that individuals who have been involuntarily committed to institutions because of mental illness or developmental disabilities, they have a constitutional right to treatment that affords them a realistic opportunity to return to society. So this court case was Wyatt v. Stickney, and Wyatt was a 15-year-old juvenile delinquent. He had no mental illness, and he was committed to an institution to improve his behavior. So it seems like he was just kind of a wild kid, and they wanted to improve his behavior. There were reductions in funding for mental health facilities, and the institution that he had been committed to lost 100 staff members. These staff members ended up filing a lawsuit to make the statement that these patients were going to receive inadequate treatment. They included Wyatt in their decision, and in time they included other patients from other facilities, and the focus came off of these people losing their jobs and onto the rights for these individuals that had been involuntarily committed. So this ruling led to the creation of minimum standards of care and rehabilitation for individuals with developmental disabilities. So the judge in this case stated, these patients have a constitutional right to receive such individual treatment as will give them each a realistic opportunity to be cured or to improve his or her mental condition. And he went on to state that adequate and effective treatment is constitutionally required because absent treatment, the hospital is transformed into a penitentiary where one could be held indefinitely for no convicted offense. So the judge went on to compare these institutions with no offering of habilitation to prison. There's no way to help these patients re-enter society and learn from whatever it is that got them committed in the first place. So this created the Wyatt standards, and these are 3 fundamental conditions for adequate and effective treatment programs. And this was created after the Wyatt v. Stickney case. So the first condition is a humane psychological and physical environment, including freedom from unnecessary medication, physical restraint and isolation, experimental research, or unwanted treatment procedures. The second one was qualified staff, so enough staff to administer the treatment. And the third one was individualized treatment plans. So they really wanted to focus on teaching these patients what they needed to do in order to be successful in society, how to re-enter society. So the judge defined the least restrictive setting, and that's the least restrictive setting necessary for habilitation is defined as the process by which the staff of the institution assists the resident to acquire and maintain those life skills that help them cope more effectively with the demands of their own personal environment. So going off of that, habilitation, now we focus not necessarily to get these individuals out of institutions and hospitals, but we focus on teaching those functional skills to live their life more independently so that they don't have guardianship, or I need to write down that other point that Madeline was saying, the guided supportive decision-making. So people that do not have the repertoire of skills, they may be able to acquire the repertoire of skills in order to make their own choices and thus enjoy their personal liberties. Because if they aren't informed of that and they don't have the skills it takes to make the decision, it doesn't matter what personal freedoms they have, they won't even be able to enjoy them. So I want to work on that last point a little bit more. Like I was just saying about, and finding maybe a visual on in the instruction of like decision making and those sorts of things, so that individuals are able to make their own choice and then engage in their personal liberties, freedom of speech, religion, having relationships, and those sorts of things. And then I did list on here that this goes along with the Ethical Code 2.09, the right to effective treatment. And as a BCBA, we're obligated to advocate for and educate the client about their most effective treatments available. So informing them that they can learn decision making and learn those appropriate behaviors so that they will be able to enjoy their personal liberties.
So real quick before we transition to the next point, if that's okay, or do you want to discuss this at the end?
Maybe keep running through and discuss at the end. I set a timer, so I'm trying to get like a rough idea of our timing. We're at 10.5 minutes right now.
Okay, so go ahead, Chris.
Okay, thanks, Rachel. Along with this habilitation movement, we can see many models and many other movements that have come about as the way to habilitate these individuals with disabilities. So medical model limitations versus neurodiversity movement, Carrie, what's going on there for us?
So I wanted to touch on, or something I wanted to consider within this debate is the effect of treatment of autism on self-determinism and within the context of the neurodiversity movement. So neurodiversity, this movement was started by self-advocates, so individuals with autism along with their families who are suggesting that it should be celebrated as a part of natural human variation, and therefore they reject the notion that normalization, simply for the sake of normalization, should be a target of treatment, and they instead promote subjective well-being and adaptive functioning. So this is a distinct contrast from the medical model, in that the medical model really focuses on deficits and behavioral deviations from the social norm. So neurodiversity really supports the notion that the use of therapeutic interventions which targets behaviors that are harmless yet against social norms should, they're really considered limiting to personal liberties. And then further to this point, the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network calls for the recognition of autism as part of human diversity. So they really suggest that society needs to do a better job at creating adaptations for individuals with autism versus people with autism being habilitated just for the sake of, deviating from the social norms. And then I'm going to quote my research here, which is Kapp et al. In 2013. So a push towards targeting behavioral norms from service providers really kind of can suggest insufficient respect for individuals with disabilities or autism. And then I'm going to go ahead and quote again, Auren in 2013 showed that this can actually lead to an increase in discriminatory practices from clinicians. And then I'm going to try to pull a visual here from the US Department of Health, which breaks down child maltreatment victims and then breaks them down by disability. So try to have a little support there. And then I'm also going to quote the ethics code here, 4.02 and 4.05, which mandates that behaviors targeted for change must be described and agreed on by clients. So I'll kind of touch on there that plays into personal liberties, and that they have to be on board for the behavior change programs, and they can't simply be targeting behaviors simply because they're against social norms. And then if I have time, I'm also going to quote the difference versus deficit article, Brownlow and O'Dell in 2009.
Okay, thanks, Carrie. Some very good points. And you mentioned discriminatory practices and preventing discriminatory practices. So what happens when we have medical conditions or physical limitations that may lead the need for habilitation? And Jatin, are you going to talk about that for us?
Yes. So basically, my argument here is the fact that habilitation is more of a need for many individuals, and that is based on a few facts, including sometimes physical limitations itself that individuals may have. One of the first point I wanted to make was about what is freedom. We talk about freedom as if it's a universal word. The whole research done by Bostad and others in 2016 talks about freedom not being a universal concept, and the fact that it has an involvement of choice, a personal choice, but at the same time, it includes other aspects that go above and beyond just making individual choice. For example, the opposite of making choice is having constraints. So are we really discussing having constraints for individuals, or we are talking about allowing people and helping people so that they can make choices. So when freedom is kind of explained further in terms of independence or ability to make a choice, but also interdependence that goes along with that. And the concept here is that there's an interdependence where it's not just about making the personal choices, but when it's done in a socially facilitated environment, that's what makes the whole aspect of freedom come to fruition for individuals with disabilities. So that was the first point that I was going to make. And then the second one is about the fact that there is the kind of a disparity in terms of the health services that are available for individuals with disability as well as general population. And the fact that just because we talk about habilitation, we need to have a more specific focus on individuals, because the general population and the type of facilities and things that are available that may not be often appropriate for everyone. The other aspect is that the risk-taking behavior. There's a research from McNamara and Willoughby in 2010, which supports the argument that there's a more risk-taking behavior for not all, but many individuals with disability. And if you have that as an aspect of their personality, then having habilitation helps them avoid being put into situations that creates more risk for themselves and the others. And the last argument here is about the healthcare services available that are not adequately prepared and trained. Individuals who are actually providing services in general population are not often trained to give the similar services to individuals with disability. So that being the case, there is a need for habilitation. And the couple of the ethics principles that come in place here are, one is benefiting others, and then also treating others with care and compassion. Both of these need to be taken into account when we are talking about the point on habilitation. So I don't have any visual right now, but I will, as I go through it, then I'll think about if something makes sense here.
Okay, thank you very much. You mentioned some very great points. You mentioned habilitation being more of a need, and that we need to be more specifically focused on individuals and their needs. But what happens when we have habilitation that conflicts with personal freedom? Then how do we proceed with that? Carrie?
So I don't have notes written out for this part, so I'm just going to talk through my bullet points, and I need to work on my notes for this more specifically. But the major point here is that individual choice can actually kind of conflict with societal opinion. So freedom inherently implies choice, right? And so a bit what Chetan was touching on, but habilitation should be focused more on the long-term needs of the individual. So I think what we get into here is that not all service providers are focused on the long-term needs of the individual, and sometimes behaviors are targeted simply because they are targeted, or because perhaps they're, they're kind of against conforming to societal or neurotypical norms. So we kind of need to change our thought process in that way in a bit, where we're making sure, and this directly correlates with the ethics code, we're making sure that habilitation, when necessary, is being directed completely towards the benefit of the long term in the individual and not simply based on societal norms. And then I don't know if this is appropriate. I found a quote from a case study by Brownlow and Odell in 2009, in which a self-advocate wrote, "ABA is a way to bring me completely into the social world, and I do not want to go." So who are we for someone, to be able to articulate that and express that? Is it really necessary to kind of go against that? And then I have a research article to quote in the case study. Another point I wanted to touch on is that sometimes in habilitation, activities that are meaningful leisure activities to someone with a disability, someone with autism in particular, can be interrupted by habilitation or behavior change programs. And so that, again, is going against personal freedoms, and it's limiting individual choice. And then along with that is the ethics code that I'm going to touch on, which is discontinuation of services if not effective or upon client request. So if a client feels like the behavior change program being implemented is not, creating a positive effect, is not meaningful for their life, it does need to be discontinued. And I don't have a visual there, but I can try to look for something. I need to expand on this section a bit.
Okay, thanks, Carrie. You mentioned too, focus on long-term needs of the individuals. So if we're going to focus on the long-term needs of the individuals and make it individualized, habilitation increases autonomy, and therefore we have our freedom. Jatin, what do you think about that?
Absolutely. So when you think about it in the context of what is the overall purpose of habilitation, and to Carrie's point, and thinking through a long-term needs of an individual, the whole idea of habilitation that it provides, it helps the person get the autonomy, which then leads to freedom. So how do you actually focus on the needs of the person and then have a custom program and things that are put in place as part of the habilitation that gives the person more freedom? There are plenty of laws and regulations that have been, legislation that have been put in place, including the Developmental Disabilities Assistance and the Bill of Rights Act of 1979, as well as the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which gives the support to provide habilitation for individuals with disability. There are also laws in place that provide the funding at the state and the local level to provide the support for individuals with disabilities. So the fact is that all of these programs that have been in place are there to help get the autonomy for the individuals, which again, when referring to my earlier point about what is freedom, ultimately to get to the freedom, which means being able to make choices. If the person is able to make choices using the autonomy and the things that have been taught through habilitation programs, then that's the long-term goal that we're trying to address here. So as far as the ethics code here, I'll refer to the 4.02 and 4.04, which is behavior change programs involves a client in decision making and ensure consent. This is a key point that as long as these programs are put in place with the consent as well as understanding of the client, often in this case happen to be the caregivers or parents, then at least then they're focused on the long-term needs of the individual, which would then help them create the freedom. So again, my overall point here is that habilitation is with a purpose. It's not just an absolute term. It is being provided to individuals for a reason. And as long as it's attaining that overarching goal, then there's a lot of value in habilitation. Again, I don't have visuals here. I need to do more research. I mean, there are articles and things that we have listed here that I will have to look into and see if something pertinent makes sense.
Okay, thanks. I'd like to thank you guys for your insight and your information today. Lots of great information, lots of great ideas. Let's recap by addressing several questions. And then I figured at that time we could pick the 3 questions we want to address. And then I could go into that.
Yeah, we're at 30 minutes, and then we could spend...
Carrie, you cut out for a while for me. I don't know if you guys you heard her.
Can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay. Yeah, your connection is slightly weaker wherever you are.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm in my clubhouse of my apartment complex right now. I'll be in my actual house next week. My boyfriend's a nurse on night shift, so I had to get out. So it's nighttime for him right now. No. So we're at 24 minutes right now. So I figure we each had a bit more to say. So, if you tack on another minute or so, then we're pushing 30 minutes right now, which is good. And then we could spend 5 minutes or however long we want on questions. So the timing was pretty good.
And yeah, once we have our actual visuals to maybe discuss and share the screens and stuff, I think, I don't know about you guys, but I just was sending Madeline a different message on us scheduling a time to talk, but I feel way better about this, and it's not as, I guess, scary of a thing. Like, we're kind of more on top of it than we thought we were. So I feel a lot more comfortable about this.
Yeah, I thought it flowed really well, actually, between point and counterpoint. And Chris, you did an awesome job transitioning. I thought the flow actually they really correlated with each other.
Being able to hear you guys talk about it too was able for me to grab something so I could help it flow good too. Hey, Rachel, I did answer your question. I actually watched all your guys' introduction videos, and the information that I have to introduce the group members I got from that. But if you want me to include anything else, just let me know and I can include it.
No, I just put that on there because I thought maybe it would be easier for you if we all just like typed like a general, like where we live, where we work, kind of what we do, if you wanted to have like a standard thing. But if you have the information, that's great. I just wanted to make sure you had it and you weren't like searching for whatever.
Yeah, no, I just got nosy and watched everybody's video.
Oh man, mine's pretty rough.
So if you want to give me something else,
no, it's
email me something else.
information was there. I just was very awkward. So
I left your Christmas tree in the back.
yeah, it's still up. So
that's great. My kids made me take mine down.
Just put a blanket over it. Christmas all year.
Were there any points that were not really counter? Like,
so
at some point I felt like you're agreeing as opposed to making a different point.
So I feel Rachel and I chatted about this a little bit. I feel like it's hard to do very counter, like point and counter, because I think that most people would agree, especially with the population we work with, like we all agree that everyone should have these rights, but we also experience where we know not everyone has the complete, I don't want to say ability, but all of the information that they always need to make these decisions type thing. So I noticed like with Rachel and I think I told her that I feel that our points are kind of meeting in the middle, and that we might need to discuss how to make it point and counter, because like specifically for ours, I noticed that we both think that decisions should be guided, and that like, for example, she said skills need to be taught in order for more independence. And I'm kind of hitting on that with my supported decision making. And so I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I'm thinking that we might need to discuss how we can make it more point and counter. And even though we both might have the same opinion that people should be supported in their decisions and informed and taught these skills so they can be more independent, like in my section, I might need to go more like an opposition almost. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I hear you. I think we can clean up our individual sections a little bit and get, like, I know my second section was a little rough and I want to get more specific. And now after I've kind of heard it, I feel like the same. Like, I almost feel like I was agreeing, like Jatan and I were kind of on the same point. So I might, like for my second point, habilitation conflicting with personal freedoms, since he's arguing all the benefits of, increasing participation and all of that, I might go a little bit more in the direction like the necessity for evidence-based practice and how that unfortunately doesn't always happen. So like, yeah, I'm kind of agreeing with him and that habilitation should maybe be necessary and should increase this autonomy, but unfortunately that's not the reality. And maybe I can get some sort of data or something where it kind of shows the lack of that. So yeah, I hear you, Madeline. I feel like we could probably all clean it up a little bit and be in opposition of each other a little bit more.
Well, it feels better for sure. Because then next week we can do a final one, and then if we don't like it, then we can still have a backup option. But let's see if we can get it done next weekend.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Cool.
I got a lot to prepare, but yeah.
Yeah. And one other thing, and Chris, you're probably already going to do this. I was just looking at the rubric, and she does state that the introduction is, so not only of us, but kind of it's engaging, states the main topic, and previews the structure of the debate. So I guess you kind of did. You did state the main topic. So yeah, okay.
Yeah, it was the main topic. I was going to expand on it a little bit more. I wasn't really ready to.
Yeah.
And do we cite the way we decided? I think some of you cite better than I was trying to cite, but I obviously wasn't prepared enough. But it kind of sounds awkward when you cite every statement.
I know.
I think if it's maybe like, I know someone did a direct quote or maybe a couple, and I think with that it's very important to be like as stated in or as stated by, maybe if it's a certain person. But I don't know. I'm curious also how we want to cite. And then do we turn in like a works cited type, like bibliography type thing? Like, or how does she get our sources?
That's a good question. Do you want me to email her and ask if she needs a reference?
Does it say anything in the, do you still have the rubric pulled up?
Yeah,
I don't know.
It doesn't say.
Well, we turned in the references with the.
So it says evidence of research, and 5 points is claims show evidence of all research.
So would that be us citing within our speaking points? And I know I had that direct quote, Madeline. I needed to say like the judge's name, and I guess I can cite like the court case, and then the other point I have for supporting research, would that just be evidence that we're pulling from sources and not just talking about our own opinions?
I think so. I think it should all be research backed, because she did state that on our initial review as well, that every point should have supporting research, right?
Yes.
Or else it's just opinion.
Yes. So yeah, it may not sound as naturally flowing, but I think citing sources would be a good thing.
What about at the end, add a slide with all the sources on it? I mean, you guys are talking about it within your sections too, but then at the very end,
that's a good idea.
You could just put it up there, and I could just say, here's the sources that we used for our presentation. And each of them were addressed in each of the sections.
You mean you will just put the page up like on a screen like that?
Yeah, just like
we'll just share
share
the source. I think that's a good idea. We already have
the visuals.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We already have it.
All
of our sources anyway.
Yeah.
Great.
Perfect. Okay, so next week, do you guys want to shoot for Saturday or Sunday?
Personally, Sunday usually better for me. I'm doing intensive toilet training all of next week, and most likely will probably be there Saturday as well with the client that I have. So if Sunday could work for you guys, that would be great.
Could we do earlier? Because I will have kids later on, and this will be very hard for me to record with kids around.
I'm good for Sunday as early as you guys want.
I'm open to.
Like 8?
I'm whatever time you guys need, I'll be up and moving.
If 8's fine with Carrie, since the 3 of us are on the same time, that would be 11 for Chris and Madeline.
11 works for me.
That works for me too.
Okay,
Carrie,
so 8 a.m. on the 15th.
Sunday?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right.
Awesome.
Great.
Okay.
So as long as we use the same devices and same way, it should work. The way I know we struggle a little bit today, but
yeah. And then if anyone does find visuals, if you guys want to send them to me, maybe since it's it's early on Sunday, I don't know if I'll have time to like compile it all. Maybe if you could send me your visuals by Saturday, so I can just make one comprehensive document and just let me know which. I'm going to probably copy what Rachel did. I liked that organization where I'll have the entire outline pulled up and my talking points within. And then, for my visual, but then just let me know what point in the outline you want me to show the visual. And I'll just make sure that that's a cohesive document ready to go by Saturday night.
Sounds good.
I almost wonder too, is there something we want to say in specifics while we're presenting so that I guess if you know which point, but then we'll just say like as shown in this visual,
Yeah, you should. Yeah, because we'll each have a talking point about our visual, right?
Okay.
So I assume
That'll
you can be
just
like,
do-
and here's the child maltreatment chart from 2013, which shows da 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 da.
Okay.
Maybe, yeah, if you can maybe send me your visual with like your talking introduction point to the visual, that would
Okay.
be awesome.
That way you can have like a cue.
Yeah.
Because also, I mean, we won't want to be on screen. We won't want Carrie on screen share the entire time, right? So she'll just have the visual pulled up and then she'll hopefully.
Oh, that's a good point. Well, yeah, maybe
Like-
I could be, because then I can still control. Like, let me just try right now.
I'm just thinking so that it shows who is talking at,
Right.
I noticed with the screen share, it didn't bounce.
Well, I think I have to control that. So let me just try super fast right now, if you guys don't mind.
Nope. Okay. And I guess it wouldn't be that
I'm
hard
just sharing some random document. I don't know what this is.
since we do just kind of transition from each other.
Okay,
It
can you
wouldn't
guys
be
see the
that
document?
Oh yeah.
So will someone talk?
Yes. Hi.
That
Okay,
screen I still see that screen even though I'm talking. I'm not seeing my face, which is
No.
good. We want that screen to stay up. If, let's say, that's Madeline's visual, we want the visual to stay up. So whatever you're doing, Carrie,
Okay, but wait, now, can you see your own face, Rachel?
now if I talk, it is still the visual.
Oh, see, this is what I need to figure out. So like I can push on your thumbnails and have you guys pop up.
So make it so that nothing is highlighted, like there's not a white box around any of our thumbnails.
I don't think there's a way to do that. It has to be on someone.
Because mine, if you click that person again, the white box will go away.
Oh, okay.
So then it should pop back to whoever the speaker is. But I don't know because it's still setting the screen share.
Oh, so I guess I have to screen share between each one. Okay.
Okay.
So that's a little tricky.
We
But,
won't
okay,
keep
maybe
the visual
I
up
can
for
play
too
with it.
long.
What?
We won't keep the visual up for too long. So
And that's what I didn't know if maybe also we want to give you like almost like how we want to transition into the visual, like, and then the visual, and then maybe also how we want to transition out of the visual so you know when to. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I think definitely an introduction to the visual, because then I'm going to need a second to screen share. I mean, I'll be following along on the outline. You know what I mean? So hopefully I'll know, but I want to preemptively because it takes a second, So if I have your intro line to the visual, I should be able to pull up the screen share at that point. Okay.
Sounds good.
okay.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Is there anything else?
No, I guess we'll see everybody 8 o'clock on Sunday.
Okay, cool.
Sounds good. Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.